Welcome to the fifth Nordic Female Investor Meetup, the movement to encourage more women into investing. And this is a really special event. It's the first ever hybrid event. We are living in a world in a very special situation. So today we have 50 people at site here in Malmö. We have 4 hubs around Sweden, one in Helsingborg at Hedge, one in Arctic Business Incubator up in Luleå. We have one in Lund at Ideon, and we have one at Pinc. And we have a crowd, more than 500 people actually around the world following us. From Brazil to Nepal to Afghanistan to the US. Hope you could be here next year, all of you, but this is a special year. Let's start with putting Malmö on the map as we have this international crowd. Malmö is the 3rd biggest city in Sweden, placed in the very south, just opposite Copenhagen. It's an amazing city for entrepreneurship and is one of the most diverse cities in the world. Here you find people from more than 107 nationalities. You may recognize some of the landmarks from Sweden. You may have seen Turning Torso, our epic landmark by Calatrava. You may have seen the bridge between Malmö and Copenhagen. Maybe you have seen the TV series The Bridge. And you may have heard about that guy, Zlatan Ibrahimovic. I think he plays football, right? That's Malmö. This event is hosted by Pinc, and Pinc is a startup house here in Malmö. We have supported entrepreneurs since 2002. And we have a strong vision to make the startup world much more gender equal. Our target by 2024 is 50-50, meaning that our programs shall have at least 50% companies founded by women, and at least 50% of the companies that actually raise venture capital shall be founded by women. We also want to see 100% of the companies addressing real relevant issues in the world, going more into sustainability. And what's really good is that these two match very well together, because women seems to be even more interested in sustainability. And that is very apparent when you look at Pinc Capital this year. We had 53 applicants with female-founded companies. 75% of these very clearly address sustainability and defined SDGs. I find that amazing. Imagine more women doing business. What would the world look like then? And the Nordic Female Investor Meetup is done by a reason. It's to close a gap, because the startup scene is not equal at all. If there was a report made by the business magazine in Sweden, Dagens Industri, proving that 2019, which was a really good year for venture capital, but only 1% of the venture capital actually went to female-founded teams. And 93% went to all male teams. And this is, of course, not unique for Sweden. It looks like that in very many countries. And we are here to engage more women into investing, more women into entrepreneurship, and we are here to help you. The world needs more women into entrepreneurship and investing. I would like to take the opportunity to thank our sponsors and partners. Without them, this event wouldn't be possible. So we have Heiberg, SEB, Rosholm Dell, Baker Tilly, and also Science for Society as a part of Interreg Europe. We have also Almi Invest and Internet Stiftelsen that make this event possible. Pinc Capital is sponsored by Tic Tac Interactive. And Pinc Capital that we're going to look into right now is a pitch event. We do it for the 2nd time. We are looking for companies in the Nordic that have a female founder or a co-founder. This year, 53 applicants. We have chosen 10. It was a really, really great quality of all the applicants, but we could only choose some of them. And they represent sectors from space to gardening. They come from very north, Kalix, since up north Sweden, to Malmö. And they have only one thing in common: they are run by amazing women. And Pinc Capital will have pitches live. You see the jury on site, but the companies, they will pitch over Zoom. And it means that we will change the Zoom room between every pitch. So bear with us. We do this for the first time, and let's hope that technology stays with us. 3 minutes pitches, and then followed by 3-4 minutes Q&A by the jury. And the jury will select the winner, and the prize giving ceremony will be held at 12:50 today. And for the ones of you that would like, on the digital scene, that would like to comment, you can do that in the YouTube channel by commenting. You could also be a part of Nordic Female Investor Meetup by joining the LinkedIn group. And for the ones of you that are investors in the crowd, in the audience, you can connect directly with the companies at Minc website, where you can book the companies on Calendly. Let's go over to the jury. We have an amazing jury, 4 female investors from the southern part of Sweden. And we have second, Ann-Sofie Hörlin from Almi Invest. And we have first Heidi Lindvall from Pale Blue Dot. We have Eva Hultman from Tassaka, and Git Sturesjö from BDA Invest. Give them a warm hand of applause. Okay. So the jury, they have a quite tough time in front of them. 10 amazing companies, very different sectors. They have to look into the company based on 4 criteria. They will look into the pitch as such. They will look into the idea, the level of the product. They will look into the quality of the team, and they will look into the market opportunities. That is what they will base their decision on. So are we ready to get going? Okay, we have our first company, and that is Arctic Space Technology, presented to you by Sandra Nilsson, and she's based in Luleå, up north in Sweden. And Arctic Space Technologies offer sustainable and secure satellite communication in high latitudes. And what they do in the end of the day is they both reduce cost and they decrease the CO2 emission. Are we ready for Arctic Space? Sandra, please, the digital scene is yours. Sandra, are you ready? Please start. So this is the beauty by doing live. Sandra,
okay.
do you?
Sorry there. I guess we're good to go. Okay.
We're good to go, please.
Thank you very much. So satellite data, let's dive into that. Satellite data is okay. Sorry.
Once again.
Satellite data is something that we all come in contact with in our everyday lives. But the process of getting the data from the satellite down to the satellite operator is quite a complex business. So I'm going to walk you through that. Here to the left, we have a satellite in orbit downlinking data to an antenna on Earth. The data is then being processed in a data center before it's being distributed to the satellite operators or the customers. And as you can see, there are many operators sharing the same capacity from one single antenna. And as this is a growing market, this is of course also a problem. So the consequences of this whole chain is that the antennas become very crowded and the capacity is just not enough. And the CO2 emissions, the carbon dioxide emissions from these data centers all over the world is also an increasing problem. And all of this as the market is just growing and more satellites are being launched into orbit. So how do you solve that? Well, of course, you let the satellite operators own their own antennas. They own their own systems and have full capacity on one single antenna. An antenna that is being directly connected to a climate positive data center before the data is being processed and delivered to the customers. And this is exactly the infrastructure that Arctic Space is offering. We offer the land and the operations for these antennas up in northern Sweden. We offer the data center connectivity to a green data center. And we also offer the data processing and delivery services. So we're part of the whole chain. And today we have closed our first contract, an 8 million SEK value for a 5-year time. And we're about to close 2 more with a value of 30 million SEK per contract. And the timeline for those are about 10 years. The total market is estimated to $50 billion US, but we're mainly looking into the private or the commercial market, which is our entry market, and also the one that is growing the fastest at the moment, going from 4 to 20 billion US dollars in only 8 years. And that's an annual growth rate of more than 20%. So it's a very fast growing market. The team behind Arctic Space, myself, I'm a space engineer. We have Benjamin and Felix, who are system and technical engineers, and they also have background at ESA. And finally, Fredrik, with a background at SSC, which is one of our competitors. Our advisory board consists of the Arctic Business Incubator and also the ESA Incubator. And today we have acquired a data center partnership with a green data center in the north. We have also our first 8 million SEK contract. Next year, we will expand our team and finalize the 70 million SEK contracts that I mentioned. And in 5 years, Arctic Space will have our own data center and at least 700 million SEK worth of contracts. And the next year is also the point in time where we will start raising capital. So thank you.
Over to the jury. What questions do you have to Sandra?
Yes, hello Sandra, thank you for the pitch. Very good. Who are your main customers? Did you hear me?
I cannot hear anything.
Okay.
Do you hear me, Sandra? No? Do you hear me now, Sandra? Sort of tricky, this. I'm sorry, Sandra, doesn't hear anything. Maybe you could post a question in the chat.
I can't hear them.
You don't hear me either, Sandra?
Now I can hear you.
You hear me? Okay. So, do you hear?
I haven't heard anything until now.
Okay. Really?
Okay.
No, I haven't heard anything.
Okay. Eva, would you please repeat your question?
Yes, hello Sandra.
Yeah.
Do you hear me? Yes.
Yes, I hear you now.
Great.
Thank
Thank you for the pitch. I was wondering, who are your main customers?
Our main customers are satellite operators, so people who own satellites and who are collecting and distributing data to either themselves as the end customer or a third-party end customer.
Okay.
It can also be agencies, can be the European Space Agency, for example.
Hello, thank you for the pitch. Very interesting industry. And my question to you is actually, you have a great market opportunity, but how your revenue model is formed? How do you plan to make the customer pay for your service?
It's a service-based payment.
Mm-hmm.
So we will host their system for usually a period of at least 10 years, where we are part of the whole chain. We can install the system, we operate the system for them. We offer certain parts of software which is necessary for this whole process. So what we basically do is that we take over this whole part of the business from the customer so that they can instead focus on their core business, of course. And we also have the site, we have the data center, we have the connection between the two, and we deliver the data to them. So while since they own the systems themselves, they can do all the operations that they need. They have full control of everything. So it's a service-based business model.
Thank you.
Do we have one last question from the jury?
Yes, I have a bit more specific question. What do you mean by the climate positive data center? Can you explain to us what that is?
Yeah. So here in mainly Scandinavia, we are very good at using our cold climate, because the main part of a data center is to cool it down because they become very warm. We use wind power. We use the cold climate here to cool them down. And at our data center, for example, we actually have a net profit of energy from only wind energy. So that data center is actually even selling electricity from this, and also contributing in different ways to the climate to compensate.
Thank you, Sandra. And thank you, the jury. So, jury, what did you appreciate the most with this presentation?
Well, the industry space is really cool.
That's cool, right?
And the team stand out. We're actually space engineers. Amazing.
We don't see too many of them.
No.
Right? No, that's really cool. Anything else from the jury? Otherwise, we are preparing for our next company. And our next company is Danish-based. It's Cellugy. And it's presented to you by Isabel Alvarez Martos. The company is based in Aarhus in Denmark. And Cellugy are reducing plastic waste. And it's a biotech company using biofabrication to produce a disruptive biocellulose material to give a recyclable alternative to conventional packaging. So, please, Cellugy, the scene is yours.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed.
Good. That's great. So welcome, everybody. My name is Isabel. I'm the CEO of Cellugy, and I'm excited to be here today and have the chance to present our company to you. So most of the packaging that we produce today cannot be recycled, and this is given by three main factors. The first one is complex multi-layer designs that makes the different materials difficult to separate. Also, the lack of collection systems for materials that are produced at low volumes. And often when we speak about the food packaging, it comes contaminated with food residues. So at the moment, there is no material that can provide a solution to these three issues in once. So to solve this problem, we have created EcoFlexi. Our technology lies in a novel combination of bacteria, which in the presence of sugar produce nano-sized cellulose. After several processing steps, we end up with a water-based suspension that we have called EcoFlexi. EcoFlexi can be used in a wide range of applications. For example, as a coating to improve the barrier performance of paperboard, or as an additive to improve the mechanical strength of other biomaterials, or being shaped, for example, as a flexible film. We have worked hard to establish partnerships all over the value chain, and at the moment we have a letter of interest from the second largest sugar producer in Europe, as well as agreements with one of the biggest chemical companies in the world, 2 agreements with leading packaging providers, and also 2 leading food producers. Our technology has been awarded 13 times by international institutions. We are entering the huge green packaging market where sustainable coatings account for approximately 3% of this market. This segment is growing approximately 5% on yearly basis, and Cellugy aims to capture about 1% of this target market after 3 years of commercialization. EcoFlexi stands up in the market where 2 major competing technologies can be found. It is the only one that combines the recyclability of plastics with the sustainability of bioplastics, while providing a good barrier property and also a good adhesion to the paperboard without the need of extra adhesives. We have built a solid and successful team with a strong scientific and business competences among the co-founders. The team is also complemented with skill sets in communication, research, and business relationships. Currently, we count with the support from the Novo Nordisk Bioinnovation Institute, and next year we will be launching our seed round. This is intended to scale up the technology as well as to bring EcoFlexi to the market. For that, we have secured 2.4 million euros from the European Commission, and we will be looking to assemble the right syndicate of investors to complement the round. So if this sounds interesting to you, please feel free to reach me out afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. Over to the jury. Questions?
Yes.
Git.
Thank you for the pitch. I have a question about the price compared to traditional plastic products. Where are you in the price range?
Yeah, so at the moment, because we are in lab scale yet, our price is around 10 times higher, but our goal is that this price will be competitive with other bioplastics by 2026. So we will be selling it around 4 euros per kilo.
Thank you.
I also have a question. I wonder, you mentioned that it's biodegradable on land. Do you know how biodegradable in water it is?
Yeah, actually in water it's edible, so the animals could even eat it and digest it because it's considered as dietary fiber. So it doesn't disintegrate in water, but it's not harmful at all.
Okay. You mentioned that one of the ingredients is sugar. And how can you see the impact on the environment when you need so much? I don't know the exact grade of sugar in the product, but how will it impact the environment?
So this is a very good question, and actually we are using what is called surplus sugar. So producers of sugar in Europe actually have a big percentage of their sugar production that goes to waste. In 1 year, it can be around 2 million tons. So what we are using in our production process is this surplus sugar, and we estimate to be using around 1% of the current surplus sugar in Europe by 2026. So there is sufficient of this, let's call it waste feedstock for us to be used in our production.
Oh, really great. Thank you.
Great. I have one more quick question, if we have time.
We have time.
I just wanted to ask about your go-to-market strategy and who are you planning to kind of sell to first?
Yeah, so our customers are primarily the chemical companies and that provides packaging materials for the packaging companies and also the packaging companies themselves. So at the moment, we are engaging in co-creation projects together with these key selected partners that can help us bring innovative products into the market together with us.
We have time for one more question. Seems very clear. Okay, thanks a lot, Isabel. Good to have you here. And you know, you're the only Danish company today.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Isabel. Okay, jury, what did you find most interesting with this company?
I think it's a great opportunity for the world. If this is true and if it's going to work, I think it's amazing.
Really cool, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
Specifically like the idea that they're using surplus sugar, and
Yes.
if this is surplus sugar that they can then create products out of, then that's really amazing for everyone.
Really good. And our next company, that is Gardenize. But before we start, I'd also like to remind you that you could chat in the YouTube channel. And investors, don't forget to actually book meetings with the company over the calendar link at minc.se. And as you may have seen in the program, we do 5 companies, and then we will have a small break at about 10 to 10. Maybe we are running a little bit late. And then we have another 5 companies. And our next company, Gardenize, is presented by Jenny Rydebrink. And the company is based up in Torslanda in Sweden. And as you may know, gardening has become ever increasing popular. And Gardenize, they help people to become better planet keepers by caring about the plants around them. So Jenny, the scene is yours.
Thank you very much. I hope I did not create any problem before.
Nope.
So, yes, my name is Jenny Rydebrink, and I'm the CEO and founder of Gardenize, the app for gardeners. Do you know that there are more than 250 million gardeners out there, and we all share the same problems? We plant shrubs and perennials and bulbs, we trim our trees, and we harvest our crops. Problems are, 1, we forget what we planted. We mix up the seeds in our flower beds, and we wonder, when is the right time to trim and prune my trees, and how should it be done? Well, the solution, of course, is to look for an app. But what do you find in App Store? Well, you find social networks, plant identifications applications, and, well, if you ask people what they're actually doing, they use pen and paper still. So that's why we came up with Gardenize. A tool where you can organize your garden with plans, areas, diary, and you get an overview. You also get tips and inspiration, and you can socialize with your garden friends. Gardenize is also available on computer for those who are really into the gardening and want to keep a lot of notes and documentation. The team behind Gardenize, we are a team of entrepreneurs with 20 plus years of experience from high-tech, AI, and startups, and we all share a passion for gardening. Our target group is private gardeners, people who are practical and passionate with their own garden, a balcony maybe, house plants, or maybe they're a member of a community garden, and they subscribe to our service. Professional gardeners, they tend to other people's garden or have a public park, also a subscription model. And for the future, we'll look for corporations within e-commerce, advertising, Internet of Things, and smart gardening products. Gardenize is born global, and we have users in over 150 countries. We are localized to 8 languages, and our fastest growth is in US, UK, Germany, and Sweden. And close to 300,000 people have already downloaded the app. Our monthly active users peak at around 30,000 each month in the spring period. We have a great retention from our paying subscribers, which is around 60% over time. Our roadmap going forward is to focus on more paid features, more social features, and we focus on market activities on UK, US, and Germany. And to do this, we need to build a team, both in tech and marketing. And we need some money for this. So we are raising 7.5 million SEK, and we're actually got around 5 million of that already in hand. So our guiding star is to help each gardener become a better planet keeper so that they can nurture their piece of land over which they rule. And if you want to have more information, don't hesitate to contact me at my email address. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. That was a perfect 3-minute pitch. Over to the jury.
Okay, my first question is, you have some competition, and how do you differentiate yourself from them?
Just a second, I will stop sharing. Should I put myself on big screen or do I need to?
But you're good, just talk.
Okay. So, the competition in terms of other applications is that they focus on other parts of gardening. I mean, there's a big interest in gardening when you look in App Store. So there are many, many apps, but all they do, what we do is we are more of a practical tool where you actually store your own data, your own photos, your own notes. So you have a personal interest of keeping it. So that's why we have such good long-term retention. While other apps, they have a plant identification. So, okay, you snap a photo. Oh, this is a rose. Great. Now I know. Then you don't need the application anymore. And you're socializing. The social networking apps, they are competing with Instagram and Facebook, which is a tough market to enter. So with this personal storage, we have a huge database. Over 1 million plants have been stored in our database where people log photos and notes, and they don't want to lose this. This is where we differentiate the most, I would say.
Yes, hi. I'm wondering what you will do with the 7.5 million kroner. What will you use them for, marketing or expansion for in your team, or what will you do?
Yes, a little bit of both actually. So we need to improve, add some more features and having some more paid features so we increase value for the users. We have a long list of things that they're asking for us to develop, and we can get paid for that. And the other thing is to improve the user friendliness and in the onboarding and the activity levels of our users, and to market and communicate better to our potential users. There are a lot of gardeners who are not aware of what we're doing. So both actually, both market expansion and technology improvements, new features, and building the team to do that.
Great. And how many of your users are paying users, and what are the subscription prices?
The subscription prices is, we have a low-cost basic versions for only 19 SEK per month, and then we have one for 59, and we're planning to add the premium versions for 99, and then a pro version where we have not set the price yet in the longer run. We have around 3% of the active users who are also paying users, and we can see we can increase that a lot because we only launched the full paying model actually in August this year. So we have had a good, number of people who have actually started to pay as well since then. Conversion rate was the word I was looking for.
Okay. It seems that you have a big database with a lot of good things, with flowers and so on. Could you share this with other environments, other people that could be interested in what you have in the database?
To use the photos. Well, of course, we have the issue with or the thing with GDPR that we need to consider in how we do it. But what we are looking at primarily is to learn from our users using AI to learn what people are doing, and then to push out to others to keep that technology and develop it ourselves rather than to give it to someone else, or to cooperate with someone in that sense. And also when it comes to the photos, we have if we would add our own image recognition to the plant database, we could learn a lot and give added value to something that we already have in the plant recognition.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you, jury.
Thank you.
So, jury, what did you find most interesting with this pitch?
I would need it.
You would need it. Good.
But a lot of energy, and I think especially in this time, Corona time, where garden have been everyone has been crazy in their gardens. I think that good timing.
Yeah, indeed. And for the audience here at site in Malmö, but also digital audience, if you're new to investment or interested in investments, Ann-Sofie and I, we have made some films that you could find on minc.se/NFIM about how to get started to actually invest in startups. Are we ready for the next company? Yes, and the next company is Moving Floor, and Moving Floor is presented to you by Peg Söderberg. Company is based on Gotland and Ireland, on the eastern part of Sweden, and they are actually in the space of smart farming, and they would like to improve the global animal protein production with increased yield, but also with reduced emissions. So please, Moving Floor, the scene is yours.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Peg Söderberg, CEO of Moving Floor. I will tell you why pig farming is important to you. 80% of all antibiotics globally are given to animals, and this fuels antibiotic resistance, predicted to kill 10 million people yearly. Agriculture is also a big polluter. The problem originates in the farms today, lacking optimization, resulting in dirty animals, and this is compensated by antibiotics. We have a patented solution where we rotate the floors underneath the pigs and we give them a toilet. We keep them clean and healthy. We are currently running a pilot on Gotland. We are in pre-commercial phase. We've signed a deal in China with a big Chinese pork producer on 40 million euro deal. The big market drivers we see is the legislation on antibiotics use. It's being banned in the EU, along with banning high levels of gas emissions. African swine fever last year killed half of the Chinese pig population. The industry is now in a big rebuilding phase, and this presents a window of opportunity for us, which is unforeseen. We see in our competition the current industry standard being not sustainable. The emerging new technologies are, to our opinion, over-engineered and not affordable, putting us in a unique position, being both sustainable and affordable. We have an experienced team complemented by business advisors, former employees of multinationals that have extensive knowledge and can help us on our scale up journey. We also have a strategic partner in ABB helping us to digitalize, very, very important for us. We are in this to make an impact. And as you can see, we contribute significantly to the EU Green Deal of bringing down the negative environmental impact that farms have. We are also building a strong company, a profitable company with a high growth potential. Currently, we're raising capital, and that is to industrialize our product, bring it into a large-scale demo, and prepare for commercialization on a global market. Many thanks for listening.
Thank you, Peg. How is life on Gotland? Are you good?
Yes, it's good. It's good.
Glad to hear that. Over to the jury.
Yeah, hi, Peg. I was wondering, how is the animal affected by moving floors? Is it moving all the time, or is it stopped during 1 hour and then continue? How is it working?
Yeah, good question. That was the big question when we started out. Sweden is the country in the world with the toughest animal welfare protection law, meaning that all new technologies needs to be tested and approved by the Swedish National Board of Agriculture. So we ran 5 years of testing at Uppsala University before this technology was approved. So what we see is no correlation between the floor movement and the animal behavior. And as you say, it only moves in intervals, say during 5 minutes, and then it stands still for 2 hours.
Okay, thank you.
What is the cost for the farmer for one installation?
The cost is it's a modularized system, so each module is 2,000 euros approximately. comparing with the conventional system, we are approximately in payback down 50%. So we have a much quicker payback than the competition.
Okay.
Hello, Peg. Thank you. What is your biggest challenge and how do you plan to overcome them?
Our biggest challenge is bringing a new technology, market disruptive technology to the market. Basically, you need your customers to trust you. And we plan to overcome that by our scale-up model. And that is to identify strong partners on each geographical market where we have patents, which we've also done now in China, to find that very, very strong early adopter willing to put up demo farms so that others, the followers, can come watch it live and then go ahead and invest.
Thank you, Peg. Thank you, jury. Warm hand to Peg.
Thank you.
And jury, what did you find the most amazing with this pitch?
I think one thing is interesting is that we see a lot of plant-based and protein and how you should not eat meat. But of course, we still eat a lot of meat. And we have to also not forget the living animals today.
Thank you. And now we're having our last company before the short break. And that is Malmö-based company. It's Omei, presented to you by Nicolina Fransson. And Nicolina is a SaaS company addressing mental illness among children and youth. Nicolina, please, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone, and thank you for this great opportunity. My name is Nicolina, and I am the founder and CEO at Omei. And I'm going to be talking about our next generation. Because 1 out of 4 teenagers experience mental illness. And in 2019, the mental ill health cost Sweden 200 billion Swedish crowns, and it's thereby the largest social cost. So, a sustainable future starts with our children, and therefore, we developed Omei. And Omei is a digital service and a platform where children via an app can tell how they feel and what's going on in their life and what they want help with. The children's responses, both from individuals but also from large groups of children, are compiled and illustrated in ways that makes it easy for all activities and welfare organizations to produce a basis for decision-making. Omei's platform also facilitates collaboration between organizations so the children and their families can be the main character in their own care. So, what does our user and stakeholders say? Well, 93% of all the children that are using Omei says that this is the way they want to tell their story. The other target groups likes it because not only can they now help kids before the problem gets too big, they also get the big data that they need to work with social investments. And they all feel safe about Omei because they know that Omei is based on the latest research. Our business model is simple. We're a SaaS company, and we already have noticed that many of our customers goes for their agreements with a limited number of licenses. Omei launched early in 2019, and we're now up and running and have several paying customers and many contract declarations. And we have sales for about 100K a month. And what about the market? Well, the market is far bigger than we ever thought. And since the Child Rights Convention became law in Sweden this year, all social organizations that works with children are benefited of Omei. And we are right now the only ones to apply to all different services of the public sector. After many years working as a strategist at national level, I know the importance of finding new solutions and to develop welfare technology. And therefore, I am so proud to present Omei's team that today consists of a senior developer, a senior professor, our own super hip designer, 2 wonderful developers, hi Ayumi, that works full-time to be able to present a new modern version of Omei at the beginning of 2021. And Omei keeps on having growing interest from a lot of organizations, both in Sweden and the other Nordic countries. And best of all, we know that we make a difference for children. And in that way, we contribute to a stronger, brighter, and more sustainable future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nicolina. Amazing work. Over to the jury.
Yes, thank you, Nicolina, for a very good pitch.
Thank you.
Very clear. I was thinking about the internationalization. You mentioned the Nordic countries. So how can you see coming to other countries? Is it a different way to work with those questions in other countries in Europe, for example?
No, actually, Sweden we're in the back end of working with, for example, the Child Rights Convention. The other Nordic countries already signed this convention years ago. So, and Norway, for example, they're way ahead of us. So we're trying, to catch up with the other countries. Yeah.
And you can see Germany and UK and so on, they are also ahead of Sweden, you mean?
UK, definitely, yes. Germany, I am not really, I don't know really what they're working on, but the UK, absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great pitch. Thank you for that. I wanted to ask about the data, and it feels like it's pretty sensitive data to have this on children. How do you kind of protect that and keep their privacy?
Yes. Well, in Sweden, we are. It's a good thing though. We are very, very hard on the GDPR and the data security. And we passed that. We have had so many different organizations to evaluate our security. And since we passed now, it feels really great that we're being able to, as you say, keep all the kids, secrets and safe for whatever can happen to big data.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if I misunderstood the revenue model. How are the customer paying for the app?
Well, the social organizations, they pay us. The app is free, but they invite kids to be able to answer the app. And more organizations implement the OME system on, the whole organization, not just 2 or 3 users, or they want everybody, all the grown-ups that works in an organization to have the possibility to invite kids.
So it's a license fee? Or?
Yes, yes, okay. Monthly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicolina. Thank you, jury.
Thank you.
What did you find most interesting with the pitch, jury?
I think it's always interesting with these digital products because we talk so much about, whether we should keep the digital things away from the children or not, but this is actually a great way of using it in our advantage where, we can actually give them a tool that they, want to use anyway and actually do something that will help them as well with that.
Thank you. And now we're ready for a very short break. We'll be back at 10 o'clock. And for the live audience, SEB have a bus parked outside Minsk, so please feel free to visit that. Maybe you don't have time now, but later on. So 10 o'clock, we start again. See you. Welcome back to Nordic Female Investor Meetup and Pinc Capital. We have another 5 amazing companies to pitch. And next company in line is Relox Robotics, presented by Fredrika Kringberg, and the company is based in Stockholm. And the company develops robots to remove repetitive labor tasks. And the first vertical that they are entered is the golf industry. Are we ready for Fredrika? Please, the stage is yours.
Hi, and thank you so much for having me. My name is Fredrika, and I'm the co-founder and CTO of Relox Robotics. And first of all, I would like to take you to the golf range. So for those of you who don't play golf, the range is the place where the golfers go to warm up. So they take a bucket of golf balls and they shoot them out on the range. And on an average-sized golf club, that could be up to 40,000 golf balls each day. And this is what they use to collect them, which is a task that can take the personnel on the golf range up to 6 hours every day. So we developed an alternative solution, which we call picking as a service. So we are replacing the tractor with a self-driving robot that collects the golf balls automatically. And we offer this service in a subscription model that we are pricing below the cost of running the tractor. And because of how cost efficient our robots are, we can still make a decent margin. Our payback time is 9 months, and in total, we profit 130,000 Swedish crowns per customer contract, even though we account on a quite high cost to serve to ensure customer satisfaction. And in fact, we already have 4 paying customers on board, and even though we've been on the market for less than a year, many others approached us, including ones from the US, Spain, Norway, and even Australia. And of course, we would love to install robots for all of them straight away, but this year our focus has been to finalize the design and prepare for a real product launch in the beginning of the next golf season. And our strategy to reach that global market is to partner up with Range Servant, a Swedish company that is the world-leading producer of range equipment. And their distribution network covers all of these countries with more than 25,000 golf clubs. So we have a signed partnership with them where they manufacture, sell, and install robots worldwide, while we supply the software and the product development. And we have just the team for that, with 4 engineers with background in mechatronics. I also have Fredrik and Mats who keep the company running, and we are backed up by an experienced board of directors. And we are a team with high ambitions. So even though the golf market is a great place for us to start, it doesn't stop there. Because our robots can essentially replace any tractor or ATV. And by using different trailers, they can perform a variety of tasks, giving us many markets to grow into. And if you would like to be a part of this, then feel free to contact me and I would love to tell you more. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fredrika. Over to the jury.
Hello, thank you, Fredrika, for a nice pitch. My question to you is the patent. Do you have a patent for the robot? I guess there are some other competitors in the industry.
Yes, there are surprisingly few competitors, actually. And today we do not have a patent, even though we have a few ideas for it, because it's kind of difficult to patent the entire robot because it's like a bit too generic. So right now we keep our IP safe through company secrets instead, and patents might come in the future.
Okay, you mentioned that you have other markets as well beside the golf market, and could you mention some examples of that?
Yes, like agriculture is a huge market, and it applies to like the technology that we are developing very well, because it's like many areas that just needs to be covered, which they today do with a tractor and a trailer, and just goes back and forth over huge fields, which is something that our robots easily could do. but today we have already been approached by some companies that does industrial cleaning, for example, that wants to clean parking garages with a robot. So yeah, there are many different ones.
Yes, a question here. Will your company, be handling the service of the robotics?
Partly, because all of the robots are connected. So our idea for the service is to be proactive, and because they are connected, we can detect some of the errors before the customer even notice. But for hardware errors, Range Servant, our partner, is responsible for actually going out to the golf clubs and performing service.
And I wanted to clarify a little bit with the robot. So do you actually own the rights to the robot? Is it your robot? Because you also at one point said that you kind of work on the software and side of it, or you provide the software to it. So I just wanted to make sure, though, who makes the robots and who takes them to the clients, and which part do you own?
Yes, we own the robots, but we don't manufacture them ourselves, but we own the designs and even the actual hardware. But they are manufactured in Range Servant's factories, and then Range Servant is also distributing them and installing them at customer site.
Great.
Do we have one last question? All good? Thank you, Fredrika.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, jury, what did you really find most interesting with this pitch?
I think it's replacing a boring job. I mean, sitting in the tractor and doing this job, you can do something else, and a payback of 9 months is really great.
Thank you. And our next company is Scriin, a Stockholm-based company presented by Malin Sjöstrand. And the company, they address one urgent problem in the digital society, the lack of exercise. We actually move too little. Before we let Malin in, I'd like to remind the ones of you that are investors that you could book meetings with these amazing companies at mink.se/NFIM, where you find calendar links. We are ready to let Malin join the scene. Please, Malin.
So, can you hear me now?
We can.
Yeah, great. So 20 years ago, I graduated from engineering school and have since then been part of building our fantastic digital society. But there is a backside of it. Children are becoming less and less physically active. 85% of Swedish children are not meeting World Health Organization's recommendations for physical activity. And the problem is global. World Health Organization estimates the cost for physical inactivity to be 54 billion every year just in healthcare. So Scriin's approach is that technology should solve the problem that technology has created. So for families, we have a smartphone app that helps you balance screen time and physical activity. It comes with a cheap optional activity tracker. You can use your phone, your Apple Watch, or whatever you have. But Scriin is not a fitness app. We don't compete with them. We would never track calories for teenage girls, for example. It's a playful app for families to find balance. For schools, we have a very easy to use system to measure physical activity during the school day. It's based on the same activity tracker and comes with a reporting tool. So we are an impact startup, and we already have proof points that we are creating impact. In a study with Karolinska Institute last year, we showed that students using Scriin increased their physical activity with 50% between baseline and follow-up. So after this success, we have focused a lot on the schools. It's both good business and kind of a Trojan horse to get into the families. And until now, we have almost 100 schools and 6,000 students that have used our solution. We signed a contract with Stockholm Stad, and we got Länsförsäkringar as a sponsor. And last week, we actually got an RFQ from one of Sweden's largest private schools with an order value of 1 million SEK. We're also working with Samsung to bundle our solution with their offerings to schools. And as you can see in this graph, we are not meeting the demand right now. So the addressable market is large and global for both solutions. The focus now for us is Sweden, but the next year we plan to expand to other European countries and US, where we believe we have a good product fit. We have a senior gender balance founders team with competence from tech, business development, and physical education. And we have experience both from startups and larger organizations. And we have including one serial entrepreneur with a successful exit. It's not me, but I have it on my bucket list. The plan now is to, the 12 to 18 months, is to scale up the school business, focus on sales, and create more partnerships. And then we're going to launch a premium version of our family app. And this project is to a large extent financed by Vinnova, and then start launching outside Sweden. So we are raising capital now and welcome investor that wants to be part of our journey and make an impact for children's health in our digital world. Thank you.
Thank you, Malin. The jury?
When you sell to schools, can you talk a little bit about how these 6,000 students are actually using it? How does it get to their hands, and how do they physically use the product?
They have it for a couple of weeks, normally 1 to 4 weeks, and they have it during the school day. So the importance of the schools, the physical activity in the school now is increasing, since the leisure times for the kids are more and more sedentary. So they use it during the school day, and they can see on the actual tracker their progress towards World Health Organization's physical activity goal.
I have a question. If you got more money, would you scale faster? More than 5 million?
We would be able to explore the school business outside Sweden faster, because we have a quite unique solution there. We have really looked around the market. We can't see anything with a similar functionality and the price point that we have. So yes, and we also have an interesting discussions with one of the world's biggest gaming companies who are also interested in our solution. So there are areas where we could look into if we had more capital.
Hello, Malin. Do you have any competitors?
Yeah, it depends on how you look at it. Of course, as I said, the market for fitness apps are really is very great, but we don't really compete with them. Then, of course, there are some built-in screen time tracking tools now in the operating systems of the smartphones, but our app is more like you share your data, you work with your family to find this digital balance. So we are not really competing with them either. So we are not a fitness app, we are not a parental control tool. We are here to encourage the family to find a digital balance on the schools.
And the schools, of course. Yep.
Thank
Malin. Very interesting. A hand to Malin. And the jury, what really caught your interest with this presentation?
I think it's a nice way for kids to get active. I mean, playful way to get active.
Thank you. And our next company is Tendo for People, a Lunda-based company presented to you by Sofie Våge. And about 5% of the people in the Western world have problems with the hand function. And the company have developed a robotic glove to support them. And I guess, Sofie, that you have your own fan club at the Ideon Hub. They will cheer with you. The scene is yours. We can't hear you, so we have to start from the beginning.
Let's try now.
Yes, we're good,
now?
so let's start again.
Sorry about that. And we are. There we go. Okay, great. So, hi everyone. I am Sophie. I'm the founder and the CEO of Tendo. And I'm here to talk to you about our company. But before I go into that, I would like to introduce you to Johan. When Johan was young, he broke his neck in a diving accident. His life changed in a split second as he became paralyzed in almost his entire body, and he is now completely dependent on the help of others. But we met Johan, and he tried our product, a minimalistic robotic glove, and within 10 seconds from putting it on, he could drink, draw, and eat by himself for the first time in over 20 years. When listing the most important abilities for independence, hand function is actually always ranked the highest, and that is even ahead of the ability to walk. To enable this independence, we have developed a wearable robotic aid, a minimalistic hand exoskeleton that helps the user to grip, hold, and release objects intuitively. Sorry. The user controls the product with biometric sensors, which allows it to respond to a signal that the body itself does not respond to. Today, we are on our 4th iteration of our prototype, and the technology has been verified with users at our partner clinic in Denmark, where it got described as the first exoskeleton that makes sense. In 2019, we were announced as the best robotic startup in Europe. We will now optimize the technology further and validate it through clinical trials before reaching the market in the end of 2022. The initial target group are people who are paralyzed due to a spinal cord injury, just like Johan. However, our vision is much greater than that, because about 5% of the population has a dysfunctional grip, resulting in a potential of 50 million users in our chosen target markets. And the exoskeleton market is expected to grow to $4.2 billion in 2027. We will prove the product's commercial potential during the initial sales period through clinics in Scandinavia, where the device will be sold as a custom-made one for people with spinal cord injuries. And we will reach international markets through licensing on an exclusive basis for a specific application and geographic segment. And we already have several established relationships with leading global players. Existing products addressing this and related needs are often quite bulky or impractical. And what differentiates us mainly is our small size, the revolutionary human-robotic interaction with intuitive control, and the fact that we can assist the user to both open and close the grip. So, hi everyone, I'm Sophie, I'm the CEO of Tendo. I have an amazing team with broad competences and the support and validation from our investors, consisting of a world-recognized orthopedic engineer, a former CEO of an international medtech company, and an actual user. We're raising 2 million euros in 2 steps, which will enable us to go to market and regenerate 17 million euros in revenue by 2027. And we're now looking for you who want to join us and transform lives.
Thank you. Great presentation, Sophie. Over to the jury.
Yes. Hi, Sophie, and thank you for a good pitch. Who is the customer? Is that the clinics? And what is the cost for one patient?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in the initial phase, the patient will be the user, and the buyer will actually be the clinic or the government. So it will be bought through clinics. Different parts of Scandinavia have a little bit difference between who's actually the payer. In Sweden, it's the clinic itself, which is a benefit of having it custom made, because then they can take that decision by themselves without having to have the product procured by national welfare systems, which is otherwise a very long journey. So that is the way in Sweden, and quite similar in the rest of Scandinavian countries.
And the cost for one
person? The cost is 15,000 euros, but that is for product, custom making process, which includes consultancy or services from Tendo and from an orthopedical engineer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sophie, for the pitch. My question to you is actually, what is your unfair advantage? What will make you to succeed? I mean, I know you have a competition, but please.
I think one of the biggest things is that we have involved the users throughout the whole journey. We have, before we even started on technology, we have not created a tech and then forced it into a user group. We've started with a group. What is the actual pain? What is the actual thing that makes a product accepted? And we put all that together when developing the technology, which makes us, we weigh less than others. Our product weighs about 200 grams, which is about 1/4 of our closest competitor's weight, but we still offer the same strength. We use design to make it much more attractive and easy to use instead of having to walk around like a Robocop. Maybe someone wants to be a Robocop, but others don't. And of course, the intuitive control, the biometric sensors that gives you intuitive control that you don't need any buttons or anything. The robot just simply follows whatever you do.
Okay, thank you.
One last question.
This technology, could it be used on other parts of the body, or is just the grip?
Absolutely, it can be used, and that's actually in our long-term goal. We want to expand the product portfolio because we can take exactly the same tech and we can apply it for an elbow, a shoulder, a knee, and we even thought of this from the beginning, so we included that option in our patents. So we have some different patents, and we have included that from the beginning to make sure that we have that possibility open.
Thank you, Sophie. Great.
Thanks so much.
Okay, jury, what will you really remember after this presentation?
Well, the storytelling, I mean, with the actual patient, starting with that, it's gripping you.
Yeah. Okay, we have 2 more companies to go. And for the ones of you in the YouTube channel posting comments, questions, we see you. Sophie here, comment on it. And if you have questions to the companies, we make sure that we will forward that to the companies, but we do not have time to take up a discussion right now. Okay, our next company, The Fit. Have you ever bought clothes on the internet and then you had to return them because they did not fit? Well, here's a solution for you. Based on AI, we will find a good way not to do that any longer. So are we ready for Lisa? Not yet. And Lisa, she has also her own hub up in Luleå, where we have one team looking at the event together. So hello, Luleå. I wish this would be Eurovision context, because then you could say Luleå de Bois, but we cannot do that right now. I can just cheer you and wish that you were here. And the Fit is based up in the very north. I think it's even north from Luleå, Kalix.
Correct.
Yes. And Kalix is known for löjrom. I don't know the word in English.
Yep, that's what we got.
Okay, we're good. Lisa, please, the digital scene is yours.
Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. And my name is Lisa Lindvall, and I'm CEO and founder of The Fit. So returns are by far e-commerce's biggest challenge. Return level in fashion are as high as 70%, where 72% are caused by poor fit. It eats up profit margins and it leaves a terrible climate footprint from waste and shipments. So it's time we take action and actually prevent returns by giving users better experiences. So The Fit provides an AI solution for personalized size and fit recommendations online. We work in the very forefront of deep learning and edge computing, and with the mobile body scanning technology for extracting body data from images and an intelligent recommendation engine, we bring insights to retailers and personalized user experiences to online shoppers. The user simply takes 2 photos, get their body measurements, and take it to their favorite shops. This way, we help retailers to reduce returns and running more profitable and sustainable businesses. We went live with our first retailer before the summer with great results. Vi ska se, jag gör det.
But not your presentation.
Okay.
So you should share your screen.
Yeah.
There we are.
All right, so you guys haven't seen anything.
No, but it was a very good presentation, so please.
Okay, we'll just skip forward then. So we went live with our first retailer before the summer, and we've seen great results so far. We've generated new business from first-time buyer of the brand, and we're on track to reduce returns with 15% already. We're now closing deals with paying customers, and we have long-standing relationship with some of the biggest retailers. We have a growing global market with online revenues of close of $283 billion. The market for AI tools are about 4.8 billion, and 20% of that is retailers who have their own brands and in-house design, giving us a current market of 962 million. There are competitive technologies out there, but very few has managed to productify the technology or actually go live with a customer. The feedback we're getting from retailers is that we have the best user experience in our solution, and both me and my co-founder has previous startup experience, and mine is from sales business development. He has over a decade in machine learning and data science. Our advisors include head of IoT for Intel and international fashion executives. So we're currently raising a 5 million crown round to take the product to the next level and to build more traction with retailers. And we believe we can do for recommendations in e-commerce what Spotify did for music or Netflix did for movies. We're changing the way we shop online by democratizing body data. So join us in changing the way we produce, distribute, and consume online. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Can't wait. Over to the jury.
Hi, Lisa. I was wondering, who is buying from you? Is it the retailers that buys your product, or is it a download in the App Store?
The download is...
Well, we are live, and things happen. This looks like actually to me that the battery went down. I don't know. Shall we give it some minute? She's out. Okay. Well, that's too bad. Well, our next company, maybe I really also lost it now. What did you remember most of this pitch? What really caught your attention?
If it's possible to reduce all those returns to the reseller, I think this is a great
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, Lisa's back.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was saying that the download is free for consumers. So the retailers pay a set monthly fee for the SaaS integration of the widget based on the size of the retailer. And then we have a shared revenue model so that we can grow together.
And what is the shared revenue model? How much do you...
The set monthly fee is between 10 to 50,000 a month, depending on size. And then we have a 1.5% on the transaction fee.
Okay. Okay.
So one last question for Lisa.
I didn't really understand. So I download the app and scan myself before buying, or could you explain more about the service?
Yeah, sorry, missed the visuals in the beginning,
Yeah.
but we have a widget on the site, so you access it through a Find My Size button. You get into the app, you take 2 pictures, and we return you with a size recommendation.
Perfect.
So it's a 30-second process, all in all.
Perfect.
Thank you, Lisa. And you already said what you remembered about the product, so we are ready for the next pitch, which is actually the last pitch for the day. And I find that they are really good. But 10 companies, and our next company is Malmö-based. It's a Minc company, WordDiagnostics, presented to you by Katarina Kjell. And Katarina and the company address the really, really big channels of increasing mental illness. So Katarina, please, the scene is yours.
Thank you. So I'm Katarina Schell, a clinical psychologist, a PhD student, and a co-founder of WordDiagnostics. 1/3 of all women listening to this talk will at some point in their life suffer from depression. Even worse, many will be undiagnosed, wait a long time for treatment, or even get the wrong diagnosis. We at WordDiagnostics address this using artificial intelligence to measure and identify mental health problems. Mental health problems are increasing, causing huge suffering for 1 billion people worldwide. As a result, more and more patients seek help care. However, the tools used today are unreliable, missing 1 in 3 patients. The diagnostic procedure is also time-consuming and manual, requiring at least 4 appointments. And also, 1 in 5 patients are missed, and 1 in 5 patients have to wait more than 90 days before starting treatment, and that is almost 3 months of living with depression or anxiety. Our tool allows AI to interpret the patient's own description of their mental health using their story and their words. The AI is developed by our research team at Lund University, yielding a faster and more accurate diagnosis. The result is shorter queues to healthcare and reduced suffering for those affected. We decreased the number of misdiagnoses with 50%, and we cut the time needed to diagnose a patient with 75%, going from 4 to 1 appointments. We have a patent pending, and the research has been described as groundbreaking, winning the Lund University Future Innovation Award and the Venture Cup Startup of the Year. In Europe alone, large sums are spent on mental health problems, and the numbers will double within 10 years from now. Our identified market opportunity is a small fraction of this. During this year, we have recruited team members, validated our prototype, and attained a CE mark as a medical device. In this quarter, we have launched our product with we have 7 clinics lined up for trial, and our first customer is using our system, helping patients as we speak. Our onboarding process takes less than 15 minutes. Our team combines clinical, scientific, AI, and business expertise. And we are raising 3 million for 10% of the company. And we already have a commit on 500,000. Please do not hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Katarina. The jury, questions?
Hi, Katarina. Thank you. The data you are collecting, where do you keep that? I mean, in the security around it.
Yeah, good question. We have the data located in servers hosted in Sweden.
Hi, Katarina. Thank you for the pitch. My question to you is your competitors. I guess you have some, and how do you differentiate?
How do we
differentiate yourself from the competitors?
Good question. We come, as many others that want to increase mental health and well-being, we come from a slightly other perspective. We come from the healthcare sector, we come from clinical psychology, and we have, for example, a CE mark medical device.
And your biggest competitors?
Good question. I think the correct answer to this is like the common like the methods that are used today, like the commonly used methods, the change in transition from the paper and pen questionnaire format and going forward, embracing this new opportunity.
Hi, Katarina. I wanted to ask a little bit about how it actually works. How do you use the product?
Yeah, so let's say that I'm a healthcare seeking patient. Then the healthcare send me an online survey where I answer questions regarding my mental health, focusing on symptoms of depression, stress, and anxiety. The data is analyzed using AI, including natural language processing and machine learning. And the analyzed results are sent to the mental health care professional who get a solid base for decisions on type and severity of my symptoms. And the tool can also be used for follow-up assessments if that's preferred.
Can I ask a quick follow-up question to that? How does it work when the language of the survey isn't perhaps the patient's first language? Does that kind of vary in results depending on how they can essentially describe what situation they're in?
So it's starting on the market in Sweden. We have the tool that we're distributing now is in Swedish, but we don't see any problem with extending that to other language as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Katarina.
Thank you.
So what interested you the most in this presentation?
I think actually what she said about the team, that they are coming from research, yeah, make it very credible.
Thank you. And now it's time for a break. But before the break, I'd like to thank the jury. And I must say, I'm so amazed by these 10 companies pitching. And I do not envy your work at all. To me, it must be an almost impossible task to actually find a winner. But a winner there is. And the prize, as you know, is 50,000 Swedish kronor, sponsored by TicTac Interactive. Before we have the break, you will be back here 11 o'clock. The digital audience, the hubs, and the live audience. I would like to take the opportunity to give a great thanks to the jury. Very well done. You are amazing and an amazing work. Thank you. And the rest of you, grab a coffee, stay tuned, and see you again at 11.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this year's Nordic Female Investor Meetup. This is the 5th consecutive year that Pinc, the startup house in Malmö, is running this event to shed some light on what we can do to increase the number of female entrepreneurs, investors, as well as the amount of venture capital that goes to female-founded companies. Unfortunately, we have to say this remains a highly pressing issue, as a report that was launched by Unconventional Ventures just last week showed that even though 2019 was a record in how much venture capital went to startups in the Nordics, only 1.3% of all those billions of dollars invested went to female-founded companies. And I think we can all agree that this is nothing but travesty. So this is the first time that Pinc is running the event as a hybrid event, which means that we have nearly, just short of 50 people in the live audience with us here today. But most of you are actually watching the event online. So either from the comforts of your home or at the office or at one of the satellite events we've set up all across the country. So we have one event at Pinc here in Malmö, one at Ideon in Lund, one at Hetch in Helsingborg, and one at Arctic Business Incubator in Luleå. And regardless of whether you're with us live here in person at the studio or whether you're watching at home or at one of the satellite events, we would love for you to get involved with the conversation and post your thoughts, questions and comments for our 3 speakers in the comment section on YouTube. Some of you might know Jeanette, the CEO of Pinc. She will be helping me here today by reading out your questions to the speakers so that we can have a lively discussion on stage here today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sandy Erestad. I will be moderating the rest of today's event. I've been working closely with startup founders and investors all across the world for quite a few years now, and today's topic is one that lies very close to my heart. So I'm super thrilled to be here, and I'm very much looking forward to the discussions. So, a few words on today's agenda. We have 3 phenomenal speakers with us here today. They all represent different parts of the startup ecosystem. First out, we have Dr. Emma Heikensten. She is a strategic analyst at SEB and one of the early forces behind the think tank Ownershift. We'll then hear from Charlotta Tönsgård. Charlotta is the co-founder and CEO of Kind. And last but not least, we'll hear from an entrepreneur gone investor, Heidi Lindvall, the co-founder and partner of the VC fund Pale Blue Dot. I would also like to encourage you to join the LinkedIn group called Nordic Female Investor Meetup, where we are gathering entrepreneurs and investors to continue the conversation well beyond today's event. Without further ado, let me introduce today's first speaker. So, Dr. Emma Heikensten has a PhD in behavioral economics. She's a former Harvard Research Fellow, and she is part of the advanced analytics team at SEB. As if all this wasn't enough, she's also one of the early forces behind Ownershift. And Ownershift, for those of you who don't know it, is a quite phenomenal think tank that's looking to shift societal power structures through ownership. And among other things, Ownershift has published 2 reports, one on the state of ownership in Sweden, which I think Emma will tell us more about, and what stands in the way of a more equal ownership landscape in Sweden. So don't forget to post your questions and comments for Emma in the comment section on YouTube, and let's give her a big round of applause.
Hi everyone, it's great to be here. I'm really looking forward to this talk. So I have some slides that will show up. So my talk today is about the gender gap in ownership. And I'm here, as Andy said, as a representative of SEB and Ownershift. But I'm also speaking from my background as a researcher on these topics. And the first question is then, maybe not for most of you who already started to engage in the topic of ownership, but why? Why should we care? Why do I care? Why should society care? And what's actually going on in terms of ownership? So we see that in Sweden in general, we see that income from capital is more important than ever. A very large part of our income in society comes from capital today, and it didn't only 20 years ago. We also see that this capital is unevenly distributed. Most of the capital income goes to the top 1% in the population, and very little goes to the rest. And within this group, with the 1% richest in Sweden, we see that there are more men than women. And from SEB's point of view, we have always worked with entrepreneurship and trying to sort of help entrepreneurs who want to create new ideas and build companies. But we also firmly believe that we can only build a sustainable society if ownership is equal. And from Ownershift's point of view, we firmly believe that we would have a better society if ownership was more equally distributed between men and women. It's about being able to choose what's right for you. It's about being able to live. And we see that in Sweden today, we do have a problem with this. Women cannot always divorce, even if they want to. Women cannot leave relationships. And female pensioners in Sweden are among the largest but still poorest groups in society. But it's also about having possibilities. The one who owns also possibilities. It's about autonomy. But why now? Why hasn't ownership been a great part of the gender discussion until today? Well, if you look at it from a sort of historical perspective, I mean, women were allowed to vote in 1919. That was 100 years ago. In the 50s, the discussion about women being able to work in general started, and from that, 30 years later, sort of the Equal Pay Act was sort of enforced. So then we had a long discussion about the pay gap, which is still not completely over. Then in the 80s, we started talking about glass ceilings. And 20 years after that, or 30 years even, we got to the discussion about the management groups and the boards. So today, that we in 2020 are actually just sort of entering into the discussion about the ultimate power, ownership, is pretty sort of consistent with how history and the rights of people from different groups are evolving. And a movie made by SEB this spring makes a pretty nice sort of impression of how this history has been going on for quite some time.
Meet Ida. In 1840, she and her brother inherit 80,000 acres of land. By law, her brother gets 2/3. Ida gets 1/3. On to 1932 and Eva. She saved some money, but there's a strong social stigma against women investing, so she puts her savings somewhere safe. When she retires in 1972, the stock market has gone up by over 1,200%. The Equal Working Rights Act was passed in 1979, but the wage gap is almost at 30%, so women, like Anna, struggle to invest and fall behind men in retirement savings. In 1991, Karen and her brother inherit a summer house. Her brother earns more and buys her out. The house has since increased in value by 450%. A lot has happened since 1840. More businesses than ever are run by women. Equal pay is on the rise, and norms around female ownership are shifting. Still, only 26% of Swedish companies are owned by women. We're here to enable more women to invest more women to lead, and more women to start the next big thing. Because we can only build a sustainable society if ownership is equal.
Okay. I must say that I love, as a researcher, coming from sort of only numbers and pretty gray reports, working with creative people who are good at marketing and making this type of movies is a really, yeah, it's amazing. Now over to Ownershift. So we met, we were 7 people meeting up in the spring of 2018, starting to talk about why ownership hasn't been a part of the debate concerning equality in Sweden. We decided to check what the numbers were, and we didn't really find any conclusion out there, like who owns Sweden. So we decided to try to find out ourselves. We looked at all types of ownership as broadly as we could. We looked at property, at stocks, at companies, forest, land, as well as patents and copyrights. And we concluded on a very sort of general level that men owns about twice as much as women. But now I'm going to dig somewhat deeper into the numbers and try to sort of see if you in the audience have read this report or actually looked at the numbers showed in the movie that I just showed you. So, for the first question, how many percentages of the beneficial owners in Sweden are women? Do you have an idea? Companies owned by women. Yes, very well, 26%. For you who don't know the word beneficial owner, it's basically, in Swedish it's huvudmän, a word that we might want to change to something else going forward. But also it's basically the person who has the largest ownership share and the most power over the company. And then, how large of the share of patents and music copyrights are owned by women? Do you have any ideas? That's a good, yeah. So we have, for music copyrights, women own about 20%, men 79, so 4 times as much as women. And patents, for patents, we see that men own almost 10 times as much as women. So then we went on with the second report to the question of why. Why do we see these large disparities in ownership? Where does this come from? And this is a literature review where we did, take as many research papers into account as we could, and try to sort of boil it down to the real reasons. We read meta studies and we sort of conducted our own to really dig into this and to find the truth. We boiled it down to 3 main areas, where the first one is the man as the normal. This headline is then obviously related to the norms that exist in society. Like, while we have now maybe the legal rights to own just as much as men, there are still very much other structures in society that makes it harder for women to find the right networks, find the right sort of positive like wording around these topics, find people to discuss these issues with, etc. And we can also see that this influences, for example, investors that are maybe more likely to consider a man as an entrepreneur, since that person have seen mostly men as entrepreneurs. So it's sort of a circle that sort of sets the platform. And here it is important to lift the role models. On this picture, we see Lillemor. She started Baby Björn together with her husband. And we also see Josefin, who is the founder of Kry. The second topic, many small streams. I would say that the headline is better in Swedish, många bäckar små. But still, we have seen that differences in income do affect investment opportunities. And this actually makes a really large impact in the longer run. And as example from the movie that you just saw, since the beginning of the 80s, you know, the stock market has increased like 100 times. And if you had a salary at that point that was 30% larger, and you would have invested that excess money, I would believe that ownership would have been more unequal today than it actually is. And we also see that, you know, the wage gap is often affected by childbirth and parental leave. After up until that point in time, men and women often have pretty equal salary levels. But after that, we see huge disparities. And we can, for example, there are studies that look at sort of household work. And if you split your parental leave more equal, you sort of have a larger chance of also splitting household works 10 years later. So I think that this is a contribution also to sort of the norms that you create in your own family around household chores. And then we have the third area, catch-22. You know that behavioral differences are often sort of being the explanatory factors in reports that are launched when it comes to investments in stock, when it comes to creating or becoming an entrepreneur. You all, I mean, almost every time you read reports like that, they say that risk. That's the difference. Women are more risk averse. And while that might be true for some areas, in some instances, that's not true everywhere, all the time, not at all. And it's also a problem when you speak to these conclusions. You say that if you just show up to be more confident, if you just take more risk, you have actually a pretty large chance of receiving a social backlash, a penalty for not acting sort of along with your stereotype. So if you sort of take a step further and you do this sort of counter-stereotypical actions, it might even turn out to be worse for yourself. So, I mean, I know there's a study on negotiation, for example, where they show that women do, like when women are forced to negotiate, they actually receive less money than when they decide for themselves. Because you might know that, okay, in this area, people are expecting that I am a stereotypical woman. And then it might be better for you as an individual to act like that. But for some more happy news then, we also see that studies on children, and especially this study then, show that there are no gender differences, for example, in the willingness to compete, which points towards that this is something we learn throughout life, This is something that's sort of given to us by the societal structures, and then it can also hopefully be unlearned. So the conclusion of the last report, it's basically not a quick fix, the problems that we are facing. Norms, discrimination, labor market segregation, wage differences, etc., are factors that are correlating, strengthening each other in certain areas, and this really points to the fact that, you know, we really need to work on a broad basis with these type of issues. But it also speaks to the fact that everyone can do something. And here are some examples. If you're a parent, you can choose to split parental leave. You can have schedules for drop-offs and pickups and sick leave, etc. You can make sure that your household work is really equal. Bosses, I mean, you can use, there's a bunch of different tools for unbiased recruitment. You can really make sure that you have succession processes that are not based on individual just sort of liking one person better than the other. You can base it on actual performance. And you can also work with role models in every dimension. It's important to also sort of highlight the role models that are very good in one way, but also have flaws in others. No one is perfect. Not women, not men. Investors, you can also use the biasing tools. You can also make sure that you structure your processes when you decide on who to invest in. You can also, like Pinc here today, make events that sort of speaks to women in particular. Teachers, you can include personal finances in education. You can try to get both boys and girls to invest in funds and shares. And you can work proactively against gender norms. And for you, lastly, for you who wants to become an owneress, you can create an inclusive network of like-minded. Start talking about ownership. Start talking about it as an opportunity, but also as something that you really need in order to become a powerful part of the society, in order to influence what's going on in your neighborhood, what's going on in your life, but also to affect the society broadly. You can find and follow role models. Get in touch. You should make a plan for your ownership cycle. What type of owner, what type of owneress do you want to become? What type of capital do you want to own? And then finally, start now, start small, and invest continuously.
Thank you so much, Emma. That is really inspiring. Thank you so much for being with us here today. To those of you watching online, please post your comments and questions for Emma in the YouTube comment section, and we'll get a question from there soon. But first, one from me. So Emma, you have a very impressive track record of looking into aspects of gender and ownership for several years now. I wanted to ask you, what about the findings in the Ownershift reports surprised you personally the most?
Well, I think to start with, what surprised me was that so few had done work on this. There's very little research that concerns ownership in general. And the existing research is mostly based on sort of a household level. You look at income inequalities in society at large, but there are very, very few studies who actually look into women and men separately. Which I believe is a huge issue, given, I mean, most couples, or at least half, do divorce at some point.
Yeah. So what have the responses been to these reports?
I think this has to do with what I just said. So it's been very positive. People have, sort of almost said, excused themselves for not thinking about these topics before. And I mean, when I spoke to a journalist when we released the first report, some of them did actually apologize, and they were like, why have no one ever sort of put this topic on the agenda? Yeah. But then also women, many women have actually gone home and started to sort of discuss these things with their partners, and we have received sort of emails from people who have started their own sort of investment groups with their friends and so on. So, I mean, I think the response has been overwhelmingly positive, yeah.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Jeanette, do we have any questions from our viewers online? So, yeah, so the question was, where can we find the report so we can read them?
Ownershift /reports. So it's ownershift.se/reports.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Do we have another one? Yes? Great question. So if we have the same development rate that we have now, when will society be considered equal?
So the thing is that since we have not had that much research done on this topic, we don't really know. We don't really know what the trend has been for the last 20 years or so. But I mean, Ownershift is working with sort of the goal of having an equal society within our lifetime. So let's aim for that.
Perfect.
Yes.
We have time for one more question. Do we have one from the audience here at the studio in Malmö? Yeah?
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm wondering about property and including women in owning more property in Sweden. What do you think are the policies that should be implemented to include more women and lower income groups in owning more properties?
So I think that, in some, I think that differs quite a lot across the country. And our next report will actually be on these type of sort of like properties and land and those that type of ownership. I think it's really important that as you sort of buy your first property, if you buy it together with someone else, you really need to share the value increase of that. And there are, I mean, you can always get help from a lawyer. Like if you come with different amount of capital into the apartment, you can always sort of write a contract in between you that will sort of make this sort of investment worth it, to both of you. And I think that that's a very important part of it.
Thank you so much, Emma. I'm so happy to have you here today. Let's give her a big round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, what a way to kick off this part of the conference. Our next speaker has a long history of building and running highly successful startups. She was a key player at The Astonishing Tribe, the company that was acquired by BlackBerry in 2010. She then developed a passion for healthcare, went on to become the CEO of Mean Doctor, and led that company to become the largest primary healthcare unit in all of Sweden. In 2019, last year, Charlotta Tönsgård then co-founded Kind, which is now a fast-growing startup that already employs more than 30 people and have already raised more than $3 million in venture capital. Before giving the stage to Charlotta, to our viewers, don't forget to post questions, thoughts, and comments in the comment section on YouTube, and Jeanette will read out some of them after Charlotta's talk. Let's give it up to Charlotta Tönsgård.
Thank you. So thank you for having me here today. I'm excited to be here. And as I understand, we have people in the camera, and we have people in the room, and I will try to do my best to kind of include you both. Or all. So I kind of don't like these when you go on to a monologue and you're going to speak for 30 minutes about something. I would love to get questions. I can't be interrupted. So please, if you do have anything that you want me to go into or kind of expand on, I really wish for you to do interrupt me. When you get an introduction like this, everything you do always sounds amazing and bombastic and perfectly laid out. But I'm going to do kind of the opposite to what Emma did. So Emma gave you facts, and she gave you numbers, and she gave you truths. So I thought I'm going to talk about my kind of more personal journey, and I want to be super clear on the fact that what I'm going to speak about is not truths or facts. It's my personal reflections on my own journey. And I'm very humble to the fact that I'm still in the middle of, or maybe even early on that journey, and I hope and think that there are a lot of wisdoms to come before I end it. So before I get started on my kind of more specific reflection, I thought it would be maybe good for you to understand a little bit who I am, so you understand who you're listening to. So as Sandy told you, I actually have a background in engineering. I spent about 10 years in the telecom industry, working my way through a bunch of different, both big and small companies. It was also the first time I became CEO of a startup during those years. I lived a few years in South Korea. I did big corp for a while at BlackBerry, but mostly I spent my time in small and mid-sized companies. And the common thread in my career up until this point have always been technology. So I think that technology, it's basically the superpower that makes it possible for us to do things that we couldn't do without it. And I think for most of my years in the telecom industry, I always worked with cutting-edge technologies to kind of be part of creating things that didn't exist before from a technology perspective. And at some point, I just reached the point personally where I kind of took a step back and I thought, technology is amazing. I'm always going to work with that. But maybe we can actually apply technology to things that actually have a bigger impact in our everyday life. At TAT, amazing as it was, if I had a great day at TAT, I made sure that the list scrolled softer than it would have scrolled if I didn't do my thing. And I'm not saying that that is not important. We need fun and we need beauty around us, and we need people who are passionate about that and bring that to our lives. But I think for me personally, I just reached a point where, okay, I see I can do a lot of things, and I want to apply it to some place where I think it has some kind of larger impact. And then basically, if that is what you want to do, I would simplify it by saying you can either work with infrastructure, like roads and buildings and energy and things like that. You work with school and education, or you do healthcare. And at that point, I hadn't decided basically which of those compartments I wanted to deep dive in. And it was really coincidence that I was introduced to a company called MinDoctor that at the time were 12 people. And it was basically Sweden's first Meet a Doctor online company. And to me, that was definitely closing a circle. So knock on wood, I hadn't had that much contact with healthcare before MinDoctor. I had a quite blank mind in terms of what it was and what was needed. But I always have this, and I guess this is the engineering part of it, like there is nothing in the world that you can't improve. And I assumed that there were also things that were possible to improve in healthcare. So I ended up doing 2 super intense years as the CEO of MinDoctor. We went from being kind of the first company doing online consultations in Sweden to actually becoming the largest one in Europe, when you talk about treating patients online. I left MinDoctor during interesting forms, and in the end, I decided I was not done with healthcare, and that is when I founded Kind, which I'm actually not going to talk about today. But that is basically my journey up until now. So I've been an entrepreneur for a while. I haven't thought about myself as an entrepreneur probably ever, or maybe not until maybe the last few years. And I think that says maybe more about me than about what I've done. But I think it's also because I'm always been much more focused on what it is that I'm trying to achieve than what label you're kind of putting on it. And this is something that I'm probably going to speak more maybe to fellow entrepreneurs and founders than to everyone. But to me, it's something that I've seen that people very often skip this step because we get so entangled in what we can do. Like, I'm going to build this app or I'm going to kind of do this thing, that we miss that step of actually taking a step back and thinking about what is it that I'm actually wanting to achieve. And I think up until the point with Min Doctor, I had been super focused on only that. Like, I really couldn't care less if I were an employee or if I were the CEO or whatever I was. Like, I was just very focused on what I wanted to achieve kind of in the place I was in. And I think the happy part of that is that I can be happy in very many different environments as long as I see purpose and I see I can grow. I was also happy in it. But the downside of it is that if you don't know what it is that you're actually trying to achieve, you might not set you up to actually succeed in doing that. So I think that this is something I really do encourage everyone to do. And I guess it's not if you're an entrepreneur or founder or not, but to really take a conscious kind of thinking about what it is you want to achieve. Because if we take this back to entrepreneurship and investments, since that is kind of the topic for today, let's say that what you're dreaming about is that you love coffee and you want to start a cafe. That can take its shape in very many different forms. And depending on what it is that you actually want to achieve, you need to do different things to make you successful on that pursuit. So let's say that the kind of the goal for you is actually you want to do the best experience of a cafe in Malmö. And you want it to be part of your lifestyle, you want to have this place where it's a meeting place and people come there. Then that is one type of entrepreneurship and it's one way of building a company. But it could also be like you want to create the next generation Starbucks. That is what you want to do. It's still that you want to have a cafe, but it's a very, very different journey compared to wanting to create this meeting place in Malmö, for example. And depending on what it is you want to build, that is also how you need to think about how you're going to achieve that. So I think it is important that when we talk about, like when I was at TAT that Sandy mentioned, we didn't talk about startups. Like, it wasn't actually a thing. I don't think TAT was definitely a startup if you look at it with today's kind of eyes. But at the time, no one spoke about it like that. It was just a company. But we need to understand these different labels, because if you're seeking venture capital or if you're seeking external investments, depending on what you're building, there are different ways for you to get that to happen. And I have seen a lot of entrepreneurs going after VC capital because they think that that is what you're supposed to do, but they're actually not wanting to achieve the things that a VC capital funded company should want to achieve. And then you get this kind of huge mismatch that can either end up that you are actually getting early funding, because someone's going to hate me because it's never easy to fundraise, but the really, really early capital is quite easy to get if you compare it to the later ones. So you actually might be successful in doing that early angel or friends and family investment, but that is not the right step for you to take to achieve what you're looking for. So once you have kind of defined what it is you want to achieve, you also need to figure out what success looks like. And I think this is something that I definitely did not reflect upon early in my journey, but I think now when I kind of, maybe it is because I'm in the middle of my life, you start looking back and kind of think about like what took you to this point. And this is one of those things, and I know that Emma brought this up a little bit, that I do think plays a big role in what we believe ourselves that we are capable of doing. So just to kind of a very personal story from my own history, when I studied at LTH in Lund, I studied engineering. My focus was in telecom, so yeah, telecommunication and data stuff. And before I started studying, I had never done any serious programming. But when I started doing that, I kind of fell completely in love with it, and thought for my basically my whole time there that was what I was supposed to do. And I performed well in tests and so in the exams and so on. And I was offered a teaching assistant position, helping out with the new students that they came. And when I had that first meeting with my professor, that he was going to prepare me to take on this role. So teaching assistant in this situation means that you're responsible for handling the classes, all the training exercises with the new students. So you're kind of the one who takes care of them. And he sat me down and we kind of went over what I was supposed to do. And then he looked at me and he said, and yeah, Charlotta, just so you're prepared for it, they might not listen to you. And I remember like, okay, I really kind of still remember the feeling of me like not first at all understanding what he even meant by it. But he expanded on it and he told me like, yeah, you know, I mean, you're a woman, so you might be, I mean, you have to be prepared that the students might not listen to you. And to me, and yeah, to set it in context, when at this time when I studied, I think we were about 20 women out of 200 in the engineering class, and I think it's about the same still. But I think what is both terrible, but also kind of interesting with that point is that up until that point, I had never in my life faced something or someone who told me that I couldn't do something or that I was kind of different because I was a woman. And I think it says a lot, and I'm super grateful for that about my upbringing and the possibilities that I had before that, because I never ever felt that either that I was special because I was a woman or that there were limitations to what I could do because I was a woman. I kind of had done it all. I played with Barbies, I loved math, I was a mix of things, and that had always been okay for me to be. But at that point with this person, he told me that because I did not look like the success that they were expecting, that I might not be perceived as knowledgeable just because of my gender. And what is interesting is that he didn't tell me that to make me feel bad or to kind of put me down in any way. He had selected me for that position. It was his choice that I would take on this role. But he thought that that was the best way to prepare me to do that. And I think it is important because nowadays, I don't think that he would have said that. But he would probably not have said it because it's not really correct or okay for him to say it. But that doesn't mean that it has changed. And it's not something about him. He's not a bad person. I think we need to be aware of the fact that both others, but also we ourselves, we have this preconception about what success, what it looks like and how it's packaged. And if we don't kind of start acknowledging that also we have them, we will look in that mirror and we will say that we can't do stuff that we can do. So I think that is something that I really now, I'm happy that I didn't have to think about it, to be honest, when I was growing up, because I got a long kind of period of time just being happily unaware that there were things that obviously it was weird that I was doing. But I am happy now that I see it, because if I didn't see it now, I would assume that these problems didn't exist. Because for me, if I look back at my journey, I wouldn't say that it's been a big issue for me being a woman. But I start to understand that that has probably more to do with me than the fact that there hasn't been any problems. It's also, of course, what I kind of have chose to see and look at. But this is not only about like women or men. This is about kind of the whole thing, like how do we package success? So another story that actually kind of have a very real impact on how you maybe think about entrepreneurship and how you're building your teams and building success. It's an insight I got from one of the funds that I've known them for a long time. I knew them before MinDoctor. It's a big fund out of Stockholm. And they looked at MinDoctor too as a company that they looked to invest. And they didn't invest in MinDoctor. But I still have contact with them and I meet them from time to time. And after I left MinDoctor, I asked them, like, okay, so why did you choose not to invest in MinDoctor? And there were, of course, a bunch of different answers to that questions, why they didn't. But the one that kind of stuck with me was that they told me that they didn't invest in MinDoctor because they didn't think that you could build a globally successful company out of Malmö. And yeah, you're laughing. And I was like, I'm so happy they told me, though. But I was like really like super provoked when they told me that first. Like, what do you even mean like by that? And again, this is about how they package their view on success. So when they look at the package of success, they did not fit Malmö into that package. And the reason why I think that this is super important, and we shouldn't just kind of throw it away or say like, oh, they're ignorant and they don't get that and it's not true. It's because there are lessons to be learned in this if we can take a kind of a rational look at what that means. Both when it comes to, can a woman be a successful entrepreneur? Can a woman build a Facebook or an Amazon? But also, where can you build that? In what package can you have that success? Because the thing that I took out of that question was actually not that they necessarily had bad opinions about Malmö or that was kind of Malmö is worse than other places. What I choose to take out of that conversation is about who do you compare yourself to? What is the ruler that you measure yourself against? And who do you look up to when you decide what your company is going to be? And then I do think it is a fact that if you build your company in Stockholm, you would have the role models of Spotify and Klarna and iSettle, and it doesn't even need to be that you look at them as role models, but they are in your ecosystem. That will be the people you run into at events, that will be the role models that are put up there. You will have friends who work at these companies, you will have your investors, they will look at this, they know each other. And that, I think, is an important lesson to think about, both when it comes to, as an entrepreneur, how you build your company, but also as an individual, what do you aspire to be? So even though I, on a personal level, have maybe no aspiration to becoming Mark Zuckerberg, nothing evil against him, but I look at him and I think about me, or even Steve Jobs, I look at him and I think about me, and I don't want to be him. But I do want to figure out what in him made him build this company that has this global reach and huge impact, and what was it that made it possible for him to do that? And I think that also comes back to the fact when you look at Malmö or when you look at whatever ecosystem you're in, what is it that you need to prepare or compare yourself with to make sure that you are on the track that you want to be? And I definitely have some kind of megalomaniac kind of tendency in me, because whenever I look at something, I want it to take over the world. That is kind of my only threshold. And then if that is true and that is what I want to achieve, then I need to understand what does that mean for my company or my entrepreneurship. So I need to challenge myself as a leader, and I need to challenge my team and how we do things, and look way beyond Malmö, way beyond Europe, probably, to make sure that that is what I'm aligning myself and the company with. But one thing that you can't help kind of come back to when you start looking at it from that perspective, it's if you want to be best in class in something and you decide that class is not Malmö, that class is, I'm going to be an Olympic gold medalist in my entrepreneurial field, then you need to find yourself in a position where you are competing on that level. But what I wanted to kind of end this with is that we often, and from my perspective, too often, kind of think that just because the task of entrepreneurship is ruthless, I mean, the amount of time, passion, the kind of the bone-breaking, heart-aching pace and like amount of work you need to do, it is truly back-breaking. But just because that task is ruthless, it doesn't mean that you need to be. And I think that that is kind of the final thing that I want to kind of really stress today, because I think that these two things have become very much, too much entwined when we look at these stereotypical ways of people building success. And I do believe, like, if we look at the world today, there are so many things that I worry about. Not only kind of the tangible thing as global warming and the climate crisis and the election in the US and all of those stuff, but also about us as individual, kind of what kind of life quality are we building for ourselves and for our children? What kind of world do we want to live in? And I really don't want, as we see the development moving forward, we see more diversity in entrepreneurship, I don't want people to think that they have to be what historically have been the face of success. We can behave and act differently and still be successful. So basically what I want to leave you with, I mean, we're all small people in a very big kind of mix of things. I am of no religion. I unfortunately don't believe in fate or karma. And it's easy to feel hopeless in that because there is no justice. It's not like just because I'm kind things is going to happen to me. It doesn't work like that. But what makes me not pessimistic is that I also know that even if we are very, very small kind of amoebas in the mix of things, if we just decide that in my small sphere of influence, I'm going to be a positive force. I'm going to take the time to be helpful and useful for others when I can, even though I am aware that my time is limited. There's only so much I can do. I do believe that we can create both companies that are hugely successful and impactful for other people, but we can also at the same time create better life quality for ourselves, but also for others. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotta. That is really inspiring. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us here today. Brief reminder to those of you watching online, do post your questions, comments and thoughts for Charlotta in the comment section on YouTube, and Jeanette will read some of them in just a bit. But first, I have a question for you, so you don't think of yourself as an entrepreneur, or maybe you just recently started doing that. I wanted to ask you, for a woman toying with the idea of launching their own venture and thinking of going out there raising venture capital, I mean, we know the numbers, the statistical likelihood of being successful might make it feel quite daunting and off-putting. So what do you tell fellow female founders or aspiring founders when they come to you and ask for advice?
Okay, and this is going to sound slightly depressing, so hear me out. I think that no one wins, and we should not fool ourselves that it is really, really hard work. I mean, if you need to kind of define what scale you want to do things at. But if we talk about these Olympic winners, like that is not an 8-to-5 job. Like that is you aligning your whole life to be able to do that journey. And even though you do that and you put in all that time and all that effort, it's still more likely that you're going to fail than that you're going to do that. And I think it doesn't help anyone that we don't acknowledge that it is that hard. And then, of course, if you then bring the kind of the female perspective on that, it's easy to feel that it becomes overwhelming. And I think my only strategy for handling it is actually not to think about it. It doesn't really matter for me. I mean, I can think about it from an ecosystem perspective and from a strategic perspective and what I want to do when I have money and can do something about it. But for me personally, and I think as a female entrepreneur or any entrepreneur or a minority entrepreneur or anything, it doesn't help you to think about it. Like you're climbing up this hill, it's going to be super, super hard, and that is what you mentally need to gear yourself to. And then the fact that it might be even a little bit harder for you than for that next person, like don't go there.
Yeah, so just basically focus.
Focus. Because in the end, you just need to be the exception. And you also, as an entrepreneur, even female or male, you need to be the exception, because most won't. And you don't, I mean, I had 2 journeys that ended. One actually folded, the company folded, we ended it. And then the second one with Doctor, for me, it ended in quite a lot of drama. But I have not regretted any of them. Like those journeys was what made it possible for me to today do Kind. So it was just part of the journey.
Yeah, so you either win or you learn, right?
Exactly.
Jeanette, any questions from the digital audience?
Yes, we have.
Wow, your mic now as well.
Oh,
Wonderful.
yes.
Yeah.
Charlotta, who is your biggest inspiration?
That is a good question. I wouldn't say that I have one person that is my inspiration. I actually had one who just passed away in the former Justice Ginsburg of the Supreme Court in the US. And I think kind of what really inspired me with her was that she dared to have a vision that wasn't comfortable. And for me, I think that really resonated with kind of when I look back at my own entrepreneurial journey, that even though it wasn't a conscious choice, because obviously I didn't understand better than the fact that I was kind of not fitting the mold, but to be able to disregard that and just have a vision of what you want to achieve, and then even when it's not easy, you kind of just keep focus on that. I think that is truly inspirational. And then I think it's more about then like how people decide to do their entrepreneurial journeys, and that is always interesting. But she as a person, I think, was really inspiring.
Do we have a question from the audience here with us at Studio in Malmö? Yes, do we have a mic for Aisha?
Hello. So what I'm hearing or what I'm perceiving from your talk is that we really need to tackle an unconscious bias. And this is an unconscious gender bias, but bias in any way. I haven't even thought of an unconscious city bias. How do you think that we best can tackle this in a way that doesn't make people feel attacked?
I mean, I'm not, I can only kind of come at it from my personal experience. And I think it's be aware that you also have them. So to give one really kind of, I'm so ashamed of this, but I'm still going to share this with you. I think that I've always thought about myself as a kind of open-minded person. I really don't care about categorizing people like in boxes like that. But I noticed, I think it was 2 years ago, I have a kind of a high inflow of people networking, wanting to network with me on LinkedIn. So I think at this time I have 300 unanswered requests. And I noticed at one point that if the person who connected with me had, even though I don't look it, I'm Swedish, if they had like a Swedish or Nordic sounding name, that I were more likely to accept them without thinking about it too much. And when I noticed that, I was so horrified, because it goes so against like everything that I believe in. Or if they had met me in person, like I would never have treated them differently because they looked differently. But when I was in that situation with all of these hundreds of LinkedIn requests, without thinking about it, I kind of reverted to something that obviously I had in me. And I think to always keep questioning which are my blind spot, even though you don't want them to be there, that makes it easier to then maybe encourage others to look at things. Because in the end, I don't think, or I'm very at least humble to what I can do to influence others. I'm kind of trying to influence myself first, and then hopefully by my action to influence others. But to be curious about yourself and explore the blind spot that we do have. I'm trying not to do that anymore.
So that's very interesting. How did you notice that? Was it all the Anna Anderssons accept, or?
No, I think it was just one night when I usually kind of once a month I try to go through some of them, and it just kind of hit me. Yeah. And I think it was just that, it was just really weird. It was just an aha moment for me. No one told me I was there by myself. It wasn't like, it just kind of hit me. That what happened here, kind of.
Yeah. Jeanette, do we have more questions from the digital audience?
Yeah, more like a career advice. How did you actually get your first CEO position? And if you have any special advice to women of minorities?
How did I get my first CEO position? So this is going to be not a fun answer in the sense, like I've never seeked that. And I think it comes back to this, like what do I want to achieve? And I do think, even though I don't really like to admit it, I think it is obvious when you look at my history that I do have some kind of interest in power. And I don't think, like I really, really don't think that it is because of power itself. Like I don't really think I care about that. But I do think that I care about being kind of have power and control over the things I do. And I think that is actually what kind of driven me to take on more and more responsibility. In the end, what kind of made me get that first CEO position, I think it was the simple or very hard fact of I just tried to do a really good job at everything that has been thrown at me. And not to prove for others that I'm good or I'm capable, just because I think that it doesn't matter where you place me, I will always try to kind of improve or iterate on that and how can I make this better. And I think it helped me, even though it wasn't a conscious choice, that I had made choices that made me stand out. I mean, when I was a leader in telecom, I was probably among the few in the world, female leaders in telecom. So of course that also helps you to stick out. And I think even if you don't, like you can't maybe package that, but I do give that advice to students that it doesn't really matter what makes you stick out. It could be that you have like the best grades ever, or you did a super interesting thesis somewhere, or you did work outside of school that made you kind of stand out. But you need to figure out like what is your superpower. That was a non-answer, but I hoped it helped.
I think it was a great answer. Thank you so much, Charlotta. Let's give her a big round of applause.
Thank you.
it is almost 12:10, and we will now take a very short break. But do join us again at 12:20 for our final speaker. You do not want to miss this one. Heidi Lindvall is an entrepreneur gone investor, and she will tell us how and why she's just launched a climate-focused venture capital fund. So, like I said, you don't want to miss this one. We'll see you back here at 12:20. See you then. Our apologies, we seem to have had some technical difficulties, but what is a digital event without some technical difficulties, am I right? So, welcome back. Hope we didn't miss you. I hope you didn't miss us. We now have Heidi Lindvall joining us on stage. Heidi is an entrepreneur gone investor. She recently launched Pale Blue Dot, a venture capital fund that is geared towards climate tech, which means that they're only investing in companies that are looking to combat climate change. Pale Blue Dot recently announced the close of their first fund, 53 million euros, and they've already made several investments in the climate tech space. Heidi, please welcome up on stage.
Thank you. So hi everyone, my name is Heidi Lindvall. I am a general partner at Pale Blue Dot, and I'm here today to tell you why I became a climate investor. There we go. So this is me in 2010. I'm 25 years old, and I'm in a place called Gulu in northern Uganda, where I'm making a documentary about formerly abducted child soldiers. And this is Lily Coney. She was abducted when she was only 8 years old from Uganda and brought to the bush, where she lived with a rebel organization. She was made to become one of the rebels' wives when she was only a teenager, and she lived there her whole life, having 5 children in the bush before being brought out back to Uganda just a few years ago. Now, when people hear stories like this, they make a lot of assumptions. They draw assumptions about what these people have gone through and what we should do to help. But there's a lot of things that you don't know. What you don't know in this story, for example, is that Lily loved her husband. She misses her time in the bush, and she just wants all of the rebels to come back home. And I just lost my slides. It'd be good to get the slide back. There we go. So this was my life, essentially, at that time. I used to travel around the world making documentaries about social and global issues. I try to help to tell these type of stories and help figure out what problems there were on the ground that we could be solving. So I traveled to places like Guatemala, like Uganda, Sri Lanka, and telling these type of stories, trying to give people a voice. Now, what I noticed is that there were a lot of great people on the ground who were also trying to help. There were a lot of charities on the ground. But the problems that I noticed is that there were a lot of dependency on these services. There were a lot of dependency on the food security that people got from these charities. There was a lot of dependency on security itself that came from that. And I started to think about how we could solve these type of problems in a better ways. And this is when I kind of realized that business was a really great way for us to be solving problems. And business, of course, doesn't solve everything, but it does solve a lot of problems, and there are certain things that we could probably do better with business as well. Now, I spent a lot of time thinking about different business models, trying to figure out how can you solve her problems? How can you incentivize X, Y, Z to get this puzzle to get together? Get someone to pay for something in order to solve someone's problem that they had. And when I first came across technology, it was like coming across a gold mine. The opportunities with technology are endless. There are so many things we could solve if we all just got together and used technology in the best way possible. Now, the problem I found when I started looking into this is that we weren't really using tech in the best way possible. Why was it that all of the things coming out of Silicon Valley and LA at the time were all social media companies? They were all dating apps. And I mean, the reason is pretty simple. The people who were building those companies, they looked pretty much the same. They had similar problems. They went to the same universities. And I mean, you can't really blame them. They were solving the biggest problems they had. It's just that these weren't, of course, the biggest problems that we had. It wasn't the biggest problems that we had in our societies at the time. So what if we could just use technology as a tool instead? What if the people who had the actual problems could use this tool in order to solve their own problems, in order to find their own solutions? Wouldn't it be great with an industry with that kind of inclusion? Well, that's essentially what I've been doing for the past 10 years. That's the journey I've been on. I started a few tech companies that took me from London to Berlin to Silicon Valley, and more recently to Sweden about 3 years ago. Tried to build some companies solving some problems that I saw in the industry. I then went on to the accelerator side. So I helped build an accelerator in London first, before then helping to build Fast Track Malmö here, that I joined about 3 years ago now. And just trying to jump on the other side, seeing how can I help a lot more people with the knowledge that I've gotten. And then finally going on to the investor side, which is where I'm doing what I'm doing now, and which is where I've been on for just a few months. So this is essentially what it looks like more in pictures, my journey from a founder to an accelerator, and then more recently to Pale Blue Dot. Now, Pale Blue Dot, I started together with Joel and Hampus, who you can see there in the picture. And it's, like Sandy mentioned, it's a 53 million euro climate tech fund. So we invest in companies all around Europe and the US that have a positive climate impact. And we've already made 5 investments, and it's going really well so far. So you might ask yourself, why did I go from human rights to climate? Well, for me, it was actually really simple. Climate, in my perspective, is the biggest humanitarian crisis that we're facing at this moment. It's one of those problems that if we don't solve it now, we will not be able to solve it. It'll be irreversible damage if after 10 years. So I felt like there was no better time that I should be doing this, and there's no better space that I should be focusing my time on. And this is actually a clock that was installed in Times Square a while ago that shows the countdown of when this will be irreversible. And IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, they estimated that we have until 2030. This clock says that we have even less time. So we're somewhere between 7 to 10 years. And a VC fund, like some of you might know, is normally a 10-year fund, which means that I felt that it was pretty fitting to say, we have until 2030, we're starting a fund in 2020. These are the 10 years that we have to solve the problem of climate change. And the great thing is, this is also an amazing investment opportunity. And I'm going to talk to you through a little bit about why it's so great to be invested in climate right now. There are essentially 4 forces that are coming together, and I'm going to go through this one by one. We have regulations, corporates, consumers, and founders. Now, a lot of countries are vowing to become carbon neutral in the near future. Some already by 2025, some by 2060. We're seeing countries like Denmark, UK, even China more recently have said that they're going to be fully carbon neutral. And we're seeing a lot of regulations changing, such as single-use plastics, such as how we recycle textiles, etc. And this is leading to a lot of money being pushed into this industry. No one has any idea how we're going to do this yet. We don't have the solution. But what a great opportunity it is to be in the kind of climate space and try to think about this when the solutions are coming together. And then, of course, corporates are also making big change. So we have corporates like Amazon, like Maersk, and Walmart, all vowing to be carbon neutral with their huge logistics and supply chains that need to change for this to happen. At the moment, we have 1,500 companies who have said that they're going to be net zero carbon emissions in the near future. And that actually represents 15% of the global economy. So again, huge scale opportunity that no one has any idea how to solve at this point in time. And then, of course, there's a consumer shift. You might have noticed yourself, it's not about just dolphin-free tuna anymore. People are looking at palm oil in their products. They're looking at how to use less plastics. People are actually taking real action and starting to question how we can actually make this happen. And that is a huge change that's finally coming together and finally making people wake up to this. And then there are founders. We see a lot of amazing founders who started companies before who are all dedicated and dedicating their time to this. So it's a huge trend of smart people saying, this is where I should be spending my time and my money in the next 10 years. And that, of course, gives the industry a lot of credibility and a lot more capital as well. And the great thing with all this is that a lot of this is actually happening in Europe. Now, US was a little bit before us in starting to talk about climate tech and starting to use the term. However, a lot of these regulations, a lot of the countries in Europe are a bit ahead than the government in US right now on actually making any changes and on the legislation's part. So that actually means that we kind of have a head start, and therefore we believe that Europe is going to be where we're going to solve a lot of problems. And it is by far the best opportunity to be investing in climate in Europe at the moment. So what do we mean by climate tech? Now, climate tech is one of those great new terms where everyone is trying to claim the meaning. And if you Google climate tech, you'll find that a lot of people have said different things about climate tech. So of course, we're also trying to claim its meaning. So this is what we mean by climate tech. We mean companies that use technology to build scalable solutions and have positive impact on the climate. Now, this is not the same as clean tech or green tech, which were concepts that were used before, which were often used more for energy, specifically renewable energies, often more hardware, more capital intensive, and sometimes very hard for investors to invest in, due to the fact that we have a 10-year time span and we need to see the scalability pretty quickly. So we focus more on software and solutions where we see that it will scale a little bit faster than clean tech and green tech classically did. And we more specifically break it down to companies that reduce, reverse, and prepare for a new world. So with reduce, we mean anything from green mobility, getting people to eat more plant-based food, more efficient fashion supply chains, for example. It's a pretty wide space, and it can be anything from consumer apps to B2B software, B2B software, etc. And then we have reverse, which is literally looking at how do we pull carbon out of the atmosphere? How do we reverse this? And this can be by planting trees that sequester carbon, or by direct carbon capture and turning that into different things. And then we look at prepare for a new world, which is also a very wide category. Now, a lot of this change is inevitable. We already see a lot more climate disasters, and we need to be prepared for that, and we need to start to deal with that. So in prepare for a new world, we're looking at things like how to combat mass climate migration. How do we prepare our cities to be more sustainable for future living, for example? And how do we look at future of food with all the climate disasters we have, for example? So that's essentially what we invest in. I want to move to the last section of this speech, where I talk a little bit about future of investment and what I see in the future. Now, these might seem a little bit idealistic, but I think it's necessary for us to think pretty big in terms of where we're going. The first point is that impact investing is over. Hear me out. I'm sure a lot of people are going to get very angry for this one. But the problem that I have with impact investing is that if we're claiming that there is a category of startups and there's a category of impact startups, we're essentially saying they have a category of their own because they have different type of needs, they have different ways of reporting, they might have different incentives, etc. And my problem then is that what do we call the rest of the startups? There's impact startups, and what are the rest? Are they negative impact startups, no impact startups, neutral impact startups? I think it's really problematic to try to take the best of startups that we see in terms of impact and separate them. Instead, if we put them on a scale like this, then we can say, okay, they have the highest impact, but they are all the same. They work the same, they have the same profits, they have the same reporting needs, etc. And I think it's really important that we try to say that they all belong to the same category. What I suggest that we should do instead is actually separate the startups that have a negative impact. My question is, why are we focusing so much on impact startups and trying to make them a category of their own? Why aren't we questioning why there are still startups today that actually have a negative societal impact? Who is funding those startups, and why are we still funding those startups? Shouldn't we set higher expectations on ourselves to actually call all startups startups, making sure that all of them have some kind of positive societal impact? And it doesn't have to be big. Big or small, every startup should do something good for someone. I really don't think that's too much for us to ask. And needless to say, that Pale Dot is not an impact fund. We, of course, only invest in companies that have a positive impact on the climate, but we don't see ourselves as an impact fund. We see ourselves as a normal VC fund. We operate in any way as a normal impact fund, normal VC fund. And of course, we believe that profit is aligned with impact. We do not think that we have to sacrifice on this. And this is, of course, something that we're hoping that more people are going to be seeing in the future as well. My next thing is the financial industry grows a conscience. Perhaps they don't actually have to grow a conscience, but we can demand it. But either way, I think large-scale change is going to have to be seen in this sector as well. So we're already seeing a lot of pressure on banks and pension funds and PE funds and VC funds to actually be more transparent with how they use the money. And if you think about it, this is really where big change is going to be made. We see a lot of people asking more about ESGs, environmental, social, and governance goals.
SDGs are constantly up on the agenda, the Sustainable Development Goals. And finally, we're going to start asking banks, for example, these questions. So I've been asking a lot of people recently whether they know where their pension is being invested. How many of you know where your pension is being invested? Most people have no idea whether these are in any way being invested in sustainable and green initiatives, and that is crazy. So if there's any way that we as consumers should be using our power and our energy, it is to be asking those questions about how our money is actually being spent. So this is where I feel like there's a lot of potential, and some things are already happening, but we should demand more. And the last thing is that we're going to invest in more science-based solutions. I think in the future, we're going to be investing in less companies where people start by saying, wouldn't it be cool if X, Y, Z? And instead said, how do we find a solution to this? And actually look at real large-scale problems that we have. So here's a good way to start, for example. If we look at what the sources are of emissions in our atmosphere, the founders can start looking at this as, okay, where are the big problems I should tackle? And investors are going to look at this and saying, where should I be spending my money? Where is it going to have biggest impact? And I think that in the future, we'll be focusing a lot more on these type of solutions. So I wanted to do a really quick summary of all the things that I've been trying to say here. So one, we need people from everywhere to solve the biggest problems that we have. It is not enough to expect some people somewhere in a bubble to solve all of our problems. Everyone needs to step up, and we should feel welcome to step on this industry and use this tool in order to do so. Climate is, at the moment, the biggest problem that we have. We need more people in climate, but it's also the biggest financial opportunity. Climate tech is a very wide concept for companies that use technology to build scalable solutions with a positive climate impact. It is not the same as clean tech and green tech. For the investors who got burnt in that bubble, it is not the same. It's a whole new thing, and it's going to work. Impact investing is really not a thing anymore. Let's set higher standards on all startups. Let's expect that all startups have a positive societal impact and not just focus on a few. The financial industry needs to take more responsibility of how money is being used, and we need to demand it. And we need to start companies to solve real science-backed problems, and we need to create less nice haves. Now, I want to end with this quote by Carl Sagan. Look again at that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, and everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. Now this, of course, is the famous pale blue dot, which was an image taking of the Earth 6 billion kilometers away in 1990. Now everyone that you have ever lived lives on this little pale blue dot. So please take care of it, and let's all do our part. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Really fascinating. So I wanted to ask you, as a venture capital fund, you obviously have a lot of power, no pressure, but you have a lot of power to shift the dynamics with regards to who manages to raise money. And we know that this is a big problem. So how do you deal with the different aspects of diversity in your deal flow?
Sure. So it's a great question, and it's a huge question, and one that's constantly on our minds. I think all of us, myself, Hampus, and Joel, have talked and thought a lot about diversity, but still, when it really comes to thinking about how to set up these initiatives, it's hard. It's hard to figure out what to do and how to make things work. I think the biggest thing that we did right away was say that we are not just going to take intros from the bubble, which is very, very common for VC funds. So we made sure that we put all of our emails on the website. We are very open and say that anyone can pitch us from anywhere. And we tried to make it very standard, like, hey, record this video, this is a pitch us. So this is kind of the first thing that we did. Then there's a lot of things like thinking about our marketing and what we put in our material. And at the moment, we're thinking a lot about, we're going to set up some office hours. We're going to be more transparent with our numbers so people can hold us accountable. And we have a lot of initiatives coming. We just had a refresher training on diversity and inclusion just last week, and we've just kind of started thinking about what do we set up. We have our second close coming at the end of the year, and with that, we kind of want to go out with some more material. But yeah, I think there's a lot of things to do. There's a lot of things that we still haven't done, but yeah, we're definitely thinking about it and trying to get better at it.
It definitely sounds like it, and it does sound like you're doing a lot. So I wanted to ask any questions from the live audience here at studio. Or is there any questions from the digital audience? I actually have one more question while you mull over yours. So Heidi, as you mentioned, Pale Blue Dot was founded by one woman, yourself, and 2 male co-founders. This means that from a gender diversity perspective, for a VC fund, you are actually quite diverse. What difference do you think this makes to the entrepreneurs that you invest in? Or that you don't invest in, for that matter.
Sure. I actually think it makes a huge difference, and I don't even think I realized what a huge difference it makes. Just like I mentioned, we all have our emails on the website, and just realizing that, we notice a lot more women contact me directly. They, in some way, feel more comfortable to email me. They could email any of us, and that's something that I've started to realize, that some people just need people who look like them, who are in those positions of power. So I think it makes a big difference. And of course, we're hoping that we will be even more diverse in the future. At the moment, we have more gender diversity, but we're still, 3 white, very privileged people starting a fund. So we're not fully there, and I think we still have a long way to go as well.
Thank you. Do we have a question from the audience? Jeanette, one from the digital audience? So the question was, what new things did you have to learn as you went from being an entrepreneur to running a fund?
There was a lot of things I had to learn. I had no idea how it actually works behind the scenes. But I think the good transition for me was having been on the accelerator world, where I kind of got to work with both. You work very closely with startups, but then you work also very closely with VCs, bringing them in and trying to help the startups get funded. I kind of think that is probably the best way that I got insight into it. And to be honest, I had to learn so much. I had no idea how a VC fund works. When I was an entrepreneur, and when with one of my companies, I had 150 VC meetings, and I genuinely didn't know how a VC worked fully. I had no idea how they make decisions. I didn't really know where the money came from. I didn't know what kind of requirements they had. And I feel like that's something that we really didn't talk enough about at the time. And now we're trying to be much more transparent and try to explain to the startups what our restrictions are, so they understand that this is not just us, throwing up money however we feel like it, but we also have very, very, kind of strict restrictions on how we use it and who and when we give an investment. So yeah, there's a lot on just how VCs work and how the whole industry works, and it's pretty complex.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I would like to keep you on the stage. Let's give Heidi a big round of applause. The time has come to hear what entrepreneur and startup won the pitch competition, Pinc Capital. So I would like to invite to the stage Jeanette, CEO of Minc, and Carolina from TikTok Interactive. And we're now getting a note, which is, love me a good note.
No. Well, you don't know yet.
Right.
No.
Oh, right.
And we will also invite you to see in the former winner, 2019-year-old winner, that is Pamela Wahlgren from Finch. Thank you, Sandy. What an amazing day. I understand that you all are very curious to learn who is going to win Female Founders of the Year or Pinc Capital. And you know what it means because you won last year. Yes. So what did the prize mean to you?
Hi, everyone. Well, for me personally, it meant that I actually had to overcome my stage fright and talking in front of a big audience. If it wouldn't have been for this event, I would have probably sent up my male co-founder, who is much more comfortable being up on stage. So thank you so much for that opportunity. I also got to meet a lot of great female investors. One of them ended up also investing in our pre-seed round. So it meant a lot for us at Finch.
Thank you, Pamela. And Heidi, you're representing the jury.
Yes.
Was it difficult to find the winner?
It was very, very difficult, and we felt that the standard in general was very high this year, and they were all such amazing pitches. So it was a lot of debating, and we had to make a decision, but it wasn't an easy one, and a lot of people would have deserved to win, to be honest.
I could imagine that. I don't envy you. And to the left, we have Caroline Eriksson from TikTok Interactive, and TikTok is sponsoring this event by 50,000 kronor. And, well, we are very curious, Heidi, so please give us the motivation for the winner.
All right. So I have my little note here. So the winner, we see a very heartwarming pitch and a very huge problem. We see big potential markets. They already have paying customers and a lot of very impressive traction. We think this is a very scalable solution. We found that there was a very powerful CEO and founder who believe in, and we think that with the right team and support, this can actually go really far, and we're very excited to see where it goes.
And the winner is?
Omei.
Wow! And could we? We hear you. There we have. Nicolina. Woo! How does it feel? How does it feel?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
How does it feel? Okay. Well deserved. Amazing company, amazing entrepreneur, and amazing team. Thanks a lot, and thank you for sponsoring Pinc Capital 2020. And good luck in the future, Nicolina.
Thank you, thank you.
So I give the stage back to Sandy.
Yes, like we said, no digital event without some technical difficulties. So I hope Omei realized that they won the pitch competition. So before we wrap up, we're a bit behind schedule, but before we wrap up, we would like to take a moment to, of course, thank the partners of Minc who really made today's event possible. So we have SEB, Sony, TicTac Interactive, Baker Tilly, Rosholm Delv Advokatbyrå, Heuberg, Internet Stiftelsen, Almi Invest, and Interreg Europe. Thank you so much for your support. And of course, thank you to all of our speakers who've made today a phenomenal day, in spite of the technical difficulties. And to our viewers, of course, thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to join us in the LinkedIn group Nordic Female Investor Meetup, where we continue the conversation with entrepreneurs and investors well beyond today's event. You can also follow Minc on social media. Minc is live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram, where they share tips and tricks for entrepreneurs and investors throughout most days. So please go and do that. And thank you so much for today. See you later.